Did he kill his family, or do they have the wrong man in prison? Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of the Mark family murders. Viewer discretion is advised. Leslie Wayne Mark was born on April 15th, 1950 in Cedar Falls, Iowa, and he was one of four brothers. By 1975, he is a 25-year-old man, and he is married to his lovely wife, Georgine. Georgine Mark was born on July 3rd, 1950, and she was born in Washington County, Iowa. Leslie and Georgine married on March 1st, 1970, and then they would go on to have two children. Julie Mark, who was born on October 2nd, 1970, and then Jeffrey Mark, who was born on January 20th, 1974. Leslie had done some work for the Black Hawk County Farm Bureau, I guess. He was also a member of the County Extension Council. At the time of this story, Leslie and Georgine and their family live on a nice little two-story farmhouse. Leslie had inherited the farm and the farmlands from his father. That's when his father passed, he gave it all to Leslie. So at that point, that's basically what they did. They worked on the farm. They were an incredibly well-respected family. Everybody knew them and everybody loved them. They were avid churchgoers. They were a very giving family, very loving. They always interacted with just everyone they could. They did not have an enemy in the world. At least that's what people thought, because all of that changed on the morning of November 1st, 1975. Leslie's mother, Dorothy, along with, I guess, a neighbor to Leslie, someone that Dorothy knew well, they had walked onto the property. They had walked actually into the house around 8 o'clock in the morning that November 1st. And what they found was something that no mother should ever have to see. Her son, Leslie, and his wife and their two children were dead. They had all been brutally murdered, each shot multiple times. Leslie and Georgine were found in their bedroom on their bed. Leslie had been shot 5 times. 4 of those times were in the head, and then the 5th time was in his stomach. Georgine was shot 4 times, twice in the head, once in the back, and then another bullet just kind of grazed on her skin. They then discovered 5-year-old Julie shot to death in her bed. She was shot point blank through her heart and then once through her left eye. And then they went into the baby's room. Jeffrey, who was 18 months old, had 1 gunshot wound through his chest and 1 just above his right eye. Police searched the property thoroughly. They do find that there is broken glass on the inside of one of the doors. So they came to the conclusion that the house was likely just broken into. And at first they thought, well, this just happened to be a burglary gone wrong. It was probably just something random. Now, this farmhouse is kind of in the middle of nowhere, so it's not like there would be a ton of people who would see anything horrible happening on it. They also noticed that in the basement, the circuit breakers were, I guess, turned off, basically insinuating that whoever did this turned the power off to the house before they went upstairs. Police did find shoe print evidence kind of around the outside of the property. They also found cigarette butts, at least 4 of them, in and outside the property, and they were Marlboro, I can never say that word, Marlboro cigarettes. They also found not only just sort of casings, but the bullets retrieved from the victims. They were .38 caliber bullets, and they were a unique bullet, at least back then. They were Winchester Western long Colt bullets, I guess. They did also find a used condom next to Leslie and Georgine's bed. There was bodily fluid in that condom. They also found several fingerprints around the house. They found a bunch of fingerprints on these metal knobs, kind of like on drawers around the house. They would take the knobs off and dust them for fingerprints, and they kind of stored them as evidence. They found fingerprints on, I guess, the skinny piece of notepad paper. They also found fingerprint evidence, and actually a full palm print on a wall near the staircase, or on the staircase. They ran those fingerprints and palm prints against everyone in the house, the family. Those fingerprints did not match any of them. They also, doing their due diligence, would run those fingerprints against all of the officers who were in the house. The prints didn't match them either. That was just so they could say that there wasn't any kind of cross-contamination. They ran the fingerprints against other family members who were in the area. They didn't match them either. So at the time, these are unknown prints. Don't know where they came from, don't know who they came from. When it came to the cigarettes themselves, again, this is 1975, so DNA evidence was nowhere near as strong as it is now. The only thing they could really do was possibly get a blood type from it. And the way they would do that is the saliva that was found on all of the cigarette butts that they found in the house. That saliva was a particular kind of saliva where whoever put it there secreted their DNA into their saliva. It's not something that happens with everyone, but in this case it did. And so they were able to extract that and find out that the blood type was O. Relatively common blood type that happens in about 45% of people in the country, at least back then. Police interviewed family and friends, co-workers, acquaintances. They came up with nothing. No evidence of any kind of enemies. There's no threats were given to the family. There was no arguments. They found no evidence of any kind of affairs going on. The family members were pretty much all cleared until they got to Jerry. Specifically, his name is Jerry Mark. Jerry Mark is Leslie's brother. Police were just wanting to interview everyone just to get kind of like a base, right? And so they interviewed Jerry, who actually lives in California. Jerry told them a story that he was definitely not in Iowa when this happened because he lives in California. Jerry at the time is like a legal aid. He was a former Peace Corps volunteer. He's considered a very respectable dude, very good guy. Never got into really any kind of trouble. Grew up a good kid and had a good head on his shoulders as an adult. Then Jerry kind of changed his story. He said, well, around that time, I actually went on a motorcycle ride. And, I went on this particular path. He told them what, route he took. Police were able to confirm through multiple witnesses that Jerry Mark, in fact, did take this motorcycle ride. They got several people to say, yep, we saw him on this trip. But then they found out Jerry lied about his destination and the route he took. And they were like, well, why on earth would he lie about this? I mean, he had nothing to do with it, right? He's from California. He took his motorcycle from California and he kind of just sort of went throughout a few states. But why would he lie about where he was going? So they kind of did a little bit more digging into him and they found something interesting. Literally just a short time before the murders took place, they found out that Jerry Mark in California purchased a couple boxes of ammunition. Specifically, .38 caliber Winchester Western long Colt bullets. The same exact type of bullets that were used to kill his family in Iowa. So, police are interviewing people in Iowa about just sort of in general. They have a picture of Jerry Mark, and as they're interviewing potential witnesses, police discovered 8 different witnesses along this route Jerry would have taken from California to Iowa. And they found several, and 8 of these witnesses would place Jerry in or around Iowa at the time of the murders. Specifically, one of them placed Jerry in Ackley, which was just 36 miles away from the Leslie farmhouse. And they placed him there at around 8 p.m. This witness confirmed with a photo. They confirmed in a photo lineup as well. The other witnesses were also shown photos or a photo of Jerry Mark, and they all confirmed they saw Jerry Mark in or around the area of Iowa during the time of the murder. Police test his blood type. Lo and behold, his blood type is O. So, he purchased similar ammunition about a week or two before the murders. He lied about where he was during the time of the murders. Witnesses place him literally basically in the same town when the murders took place at the time they took place. He has the same blood type that was on the cigarette butts. Well, what about the shoe print evidence? Well, here's the thing. The police have never found two things. They have never found the murder weapon, the gun itself, and they have never found the shoes that left the shoe impressions in the dirt. The size of the shoe was allegedly the exact same size of shoe that Jerry wore. However, they could not confirm, because I guess they discovered what type of shoe it was, but they could not confirm if Jerry ever owned a pair of that type of shoe, and they never found any of that type of shoe anywhere in his possession. But using experts in feet, these experts were able to determine, I guess, how this individual walked. They determined this individual's gait, and they said that based on these shoe impressions that this individual had a very particular gait, and not every person has the same type of walk. We all walk a little bit differently for the most part. And they took a video of Jerry Mark walking normally, and they determined that he had the exact same gait as the shoe impressions would have left. I have never heard of this, by the way, of being able to determine how a person walks simply by looking at shoe impressions. That seems a little fishy to me, but I'm not an expert. They are, so I guess. So now they seem to have all of this evidence against Jerry. And so they arrest him, and they charge him with 4 counts of murder. But now they need to determine, well, what's the motive? Well, I guess in one of, they found a note inside of a coat inside the house, and it was a note in reference to the will of Jerry and Leslie's dad. Apparently, Jerry was completely left out of having anything to do with the farm. Their father gave all of it to Leslie and his family, and completely left Jerry out of it. So they determined that Jerry was pissed about this. He wanted the farm, at least to co-run the farm, is what they're saying. And so they would nickname this in the media the Cain and Abel murders, because brother killing brother and, the whole thing. This entire time, Jerry is professing his innocence. He's saying he didn't do it. He's saying he was nowhere near when this happened. He wouldn't have done it. He loved his brother, and he loved, his family. Their mother even said, there's no way Jerry would ever do this. Jerry's not the type of person. Jerry's not violent. She never believed, and even until now, Jerry was always relatively calm, cool, and collected about it. He always, for the most part, cooperated with police, gave them what they wanted. And then he always said he was innocent. But they kind of just said, no, you've got to be guilty because of, mainly we got that O positive DNA thing with the cigarette butts. And they did confirm, Jerry even admitted, actually, before they presented him with the evidence about the cigarettes, he admitted that he smoked Marlboro cigarettes. Police also confirmed that no one who lived in that house at all smoked cigarettes. Why were the cigarette butts there when Jerry smokes and the other family members didn't? That's kind of weird. Jerry, huh? Explain yourself, bud. His defense would argue that, and this is legit, I think, that the O positive DNA, hit doesn't say for sure that Jerry did it, because 45% of the population at that time was O positive. So therefore, you couldn't say with a degree of certainty that those cigarette butts were smoked and left by Jerry. Jerry's a legal aid. He knows the law, and it's unusual that they think he would leave that stuff behind. The defense also brought up the fact that one of the deputies who first came into the home admitted to smoking a Marlboro cigarette and leaving it in, I guess, a communal ashtray that they had there, just, I guess, for guests, maybe. And so when they tested the butt in the ashtray, the DNA thing came back as also being a secretor of O-type DNA, or blood. But here's the thing. They got that wrong, because the deputy who admitted that was his cigarette butt, when they tested his DNA, he wasn't type O. So they got it wrong. They actually said that his cigarette butt that he confirmed was his was O, even though he wasn't. So somewhere in the lab, they got that one wrong. Does that mean they could have also gotten the other ones wrong? It's a legitimate question, right, for them to have to answer. But I guess they didn't really answer it. They also questioned the defense. How on earth could you tell about this individual's type of walk based on shoe impressions? And also, how can you determine that those shoe impressions were left the night of the murder? Another legitimate question. You cannot prove that. The prosecution, however, did come up with a piece of evidence to show that the shoe impressions were left at the time of the murder. Because one of the cigarette butts that was in one of the bedrooms where one of the kids was killed, the cigarette butt left a nice little thing of ashes. And the person who put it out, they put it out with their shoe. And their shoe left an impression in the ashes. And that shoe impression was the exact same shoe impression that was found outside the house from the same shoe. So they basically determined that the killer smoked, and then the killer put that cigarette out with their shoe. So therefore, that's how they determined that the shoe impressions happened the night of the murder, during the murder. Which that's legit. But again, you have no proof that they're Jerry's shoes, other than maybe the same size, but there's no actual evidence connecting him to the shoes either. Okay, what about the bullets? Could these have possibly been the same bullets? Well, they never found the bullets that Jerry bought. He does admit he bought them. He said he bought them for some kind of research, that he was trying to write a book on some kind of, I guess, group in California, these like radical left-wing people or something, and so he bought a thing of bullets to I don't know. But police never recovered those bullets, and I guess he never said where they were. So what forensics did back then in 1975 was they tested, I guess, the lead composition in the bullets found at the crime scene, and then they went to California, purchased those same bullets from that same ammunition store, and the lead composition in those bullets were pretty much the exact same as the lead ones found at the crime scene, in a completely different state. So that's how they also determined that Jerry was likely the shooter, because he admits to buying those bullets, even though they've never found them. When it came to that used condom they found, I think they just sort of determined that it was from Leslie, right? But I guess they never actually tested it back then, because I don't think they really could have, anyway. But they did store it. When it came time to the witness testimonies who said they saw Jerry in the area, the defense also questioned the tactics used by police, because the police to these witnesses only ever showed one photo to these witnesses. They didn't do an actual lineup of photos. They showed one picture of Jerry. He said, "Is this the guy you saw?" And so they're like, "Yeah, it's the guy I saw." And then one of the witnesses did a photo lineup, and that witness picked out Jerry from the photo lineup. But the other ones only saw one picture. That's also a little fishy. For argument's sakes, you should be giving them several photos to look at so that they could positively identify and single out this individual. But they didn't do that. Despite all of this, Jerry Mark was found guilty of 4 counts of murder, and he was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences. Is that the end of the story? Not quite. Jerry Mark would continue to profess his innocence. Year after year after year, he would constantly appeal. His appeals would get denied. But thanks to the advancement of our forensic abilities and DNA testing, Jerry, in 2005, was able to successfully get those cigarette butts tested again with our now more modern DNA testing. Guess what? The DNA left behind, and this is now DNA, not blood type, the DNA left behind on those cigarette butts did not match Jerry Mark. And if you remember, the police said they had to have been left there by the killer because of the shoe impression in the cigarette butt. in the bedroom and no one else in the house smoked. So it had to be from the killer. And that was a big piece of evidence. That was really the only physical evidence they had to really even say that Jerry was the killer, based simply on the blood type. But now we can confirm it was not his DNA. Those were not his cigarettes. He did not leave those behind. By the way, I forgot to mention earlier, the fingerprints and the palm prints that they found in the crime scene, they also never matched Jerry. So in 2006, Jerry Mark, his conviction was overturned because that key piece of evidence, well, turns out it wasn't him. So it was overturned. He was not found not guilty or declared innocent. It was overturned, and the court said to the prosecution, either you're going to retry this or you're not, and he's just going to be free. And then the prosecution took it to the Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals reversed the reversal. They then reinstated his conviction, stating that the cigarette butt evidence, just because it was not his DNA on the cigarette butts, does not say whether or not he was in the house and committed the murders. Which, in a sense, yeah, that's kind of accurate, because he could have had someone else there, maybe. But they never suggested that he had a partner. They've only ever suggested that one person did this. But they're saying that that DNA doesn't actually clear him technically of anything. They want to run the fingerprints and palm prints through the whole system. And I don't know if they have yet or not. It says they were going to, but I can't see if there's an update on that. They wanted to, Jerry is wanting them to have that the DNA from the condom tested. I don't know if they've run that yet. When the conviction was overturned, then reinstated, his defense is like, what? Like, this is insane. And they also found evidence the prosecution left out some stuff from the original trial. What did they leave out? Well, witnesses had placed Jerry 540 miles away, approximately 2 to 3 hours after the murders took place, wherein it would have been physically impossible on a motorcycle for him to get from the farmhouse to this location in 3 hours or less. Couldn't have happened. But the prosecution didn't share that information. They left it completely out. A little shady again. His defense also wants to reintroduce the lead bullets evidence. They're trying to get another appeal. They're trying to get this back into the courts. They found a report that the FBI said that the lead testing they did back in 1975 is essentially now considered more of a junk science, kind of, that they don't even use it anymore. They don't use that testing because the testing they used was completely unreliable. So that's another piece of physical evidence that could be used to say there's no way of saying if Jerry did this. Is it suspicious that he bought the same exact ammunition just a week or two prior to the murders and the ammunition is missing now? Yeah. Does that motive make sense of he killed his family out of jealousy because he wanted the farm? Yeah, that makes sense. He wanted money. And so to this very day, it's 2023, and Jerry Mark is still in prison serving his 4 consecutive life terms. I'm kind of baffled by this one because by all accounts, I can't see where they investigated literally anyone else. That once they found out about Jerry and that Jerry lied, which is suspicious about lying. By the way, why did Jerry lie? I forgot to mention this. Why did Jerry lie about the route he was taking? He said because at the time he was married. And when he did this particular motorcycle trip, during it, he says he picked up a female hitchhiker, and the two of them had sex. And then he dropped her off at some other location. And so he lied because he didn't want his wife to find out that he basically was unfaithful. So that's why he said he lied. Makes sense. It's logical. Does it prove he's innocent? Not necessarily. But what do they have, really, at this point, with the DNA completely excluding him, the lead testing of the bullets not being accurate, this whole shoe print evidence, which I've never heard of. I'm sure maybe it is a real thing, but I've never heard of it before. Determining how he walked seems a little shaky. The fingerprints and the palm prints that don't match anyone in the family who lived there, nor did they match Jerry. What do they have? They have like the loosest type of circumstantial evidence at best, and that's it. And he's still sitting in prison. I have said many times in here that and this is how the legal system works. You have got to prove a person's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. If you were to retry this case now with what they have, there's no way he could be convicted if they're following the law of beyond a reasonable doubt. I can't sit here and say that Jerry's innocent because I don't know that. But there isn't enough evidence to say that he is guilty either. So I don't know. The motive makes sense. The bullets are a little... That's odd. And the lies are also very odd. But man, does that necessarily mean he murdered them? I think the biggest thing for me is the bullets. That's the thing I look at the most, is like, why on earth would you buy the exact same bullet that was used in the murders? That's a crazy coincidence. And the fact that they're never found, that to me is very shady. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. But the fact that I don't know means there's reasonable doubt. If he's guilty, he's where he should be. But if he's not guilty, it's insane. But who would have done it? That's the thing. They didn't investigate anyone else. They had no other suspects. Could have been a totally random person. Hey, maybe run those fingerprints. Hey, maybe run that DNA and see if it matches anyone else in the system. We have the technology now. Are they doing that in this case? I actually don't know. I think you have to get testing like that, like ordered by the court, and maybe the courts are denying it. I feel like that would clear it up, right? If you tested the DNA, you tested maybe even the DNA from the condom just to be on the safe side, to run those fingerprints in the system, and that might give you an answer of who did this. Just do it. But it stands where it stands. He's in prison. I just don't feel there is enough to say he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I just don't see it. Not to say that he isn't. He could very well be guilty. Just, what do they have? What do you guys think? It's kind of a crazy one. But a family of 4 was gunned down and murdered in their own home. And if this man has been sitting in jail for, since the 1970s, and he's innocent, then the family hasn't gotten justice. Then you have the 5th victim, because you've done this man a disservice if he is innocent. That is it for this case. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you have tripped, fallen, and stumbled your way into this video, hello, I'm Mike. I tell 4 true crime stories a week here on YouTube. I also tell one on Instagram, Facebook, and then a few throughout the week over on TikTok. Please subscribe to me here. Please give this video a like so it gets pushed out to the world. And then follow me on the other socials. The links are in my link tree in my bio below if you want to. If you have a case you want me to cover, please email me at makingatruecrimerer.com. Also in the description below, just email me the name, where it happened, when it happened, and I will add it to my list. If you want to support me in any way, we do sell merch, kind of like this. We have some new stuff as well. We do ship internationally, also in the link tree below. And lastly, if you have a Discord account and you want to join my Discord server, by all means, you can do so. Please be over the age of 18 or else you'll be kicked out of that joint. And that is it for this video. I've got to wrap up because the thing is flashing at me that the battery is dying, and so I can't do any kind of ending. So, we'll see you for the next video, True Crime Rudies, and sayonara, sucker. I don't know why I did that. Okay.